Hey guys, I am super excited to introduce you to one of my good friends. There's a decent chance you may actually already know her. She's all over the place in the triathlon world. And I've just been looking for an excuse to have her on the podcast. And since I couldn't be two places at once, I had to find someone who could give us a recap on Oceanside. So with us today, Ms. Ashley Anderson. She is a board certified pediatric dentist, and she is also the Mid-Atlantic Captain with Team Zoot. So a big deal in both the medical world and the world of triathlon as well. So we're going to learn a little bit more about her, hear some of her story. It's impressive. And then we will move on to get her feedback, her debrief of 70.3 Oceanside, which she raced just a couple of weeks ago. So Ashley, great to see you as always. We were actually introduced by a mutual friend at Ironman Arizona several years ago. It's been a while since then, but it has been such a pleasure to watch you as you have achieved so much in the triathlon space, and like I said before, in your medical training and achievements there as well. So thinking back, you were actually studying for your boards. What we was like, you took the board exam like a week before Worlds? Is that right?
Yeah. So I raced French Kona or Nice in 2024, a week after, or actually it was the same week. It was the weekend that I took my oral board exam for pediatric dentistry. So we have a two-part process. There's a written exam and there's an oral board, and you have to take both to become board certified. When I I guess it was the Ironman Arizona that I met you. I qualified there, and I knew that the exam was going to be potentially the same week that I would have to leave to go to France. So when I qualified, I promptly emailed the American Board of Pediatric Dentistry and said, "Listen, guys, I've qualified for this really important race. It's in France. If I can leave by X and X time, which means I need to take my board exam at this time, then I can do both." And I thought they would be like, "Sorry about your bad luck," but they were actually very understanding. So I did juggle training for Nice, also training for 70.3 Worlds in New Zealand, I think that year as well, Ironman Florida that year after Nice, on top of studying or mentally training for my oral board exam. So I took that on a Monday, left that afternoon and flew to France and then raced Nice. So it was like a triathlon of the mind and the body and just like, all the things. So maybe you can do duathlon. I don't know. But anyway, it was a lot.
So we're like 3 minutes in, and I think it's obvious as to why I said you are such an impressive individual with juggling all those things. I can't imagine doing all of that, and you were working full time throughout this as well, right?
That is correct. So that's, I guess, where the triathlon comes
There you
in.
go.
Like, yeah, working full time in private practice at the time, so in clinic, 5 days a week, in the OR, taking call,
Mhm.
trying to study, trying to train. It was a lot. I don't know if I
Yeah,
would do it again, but it was definitely worth it at the
yeah.
time.
So simultaneously for 2 world championships, passing your boards and working, I'm guessing you were probably 50 plus hours in the office.
Yeah, something like, if you add in the OR days and being on call and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we all have our excuses, and I would say I am probably more guilty to caving into mine. Yeah. Like I am inspired and challenged by you and others like you that just get it all done. So how many 70.3s have you done?
I think Oceanside was number 16. Yeah, 16 70.3s, 8 fulls, 3 full distance world championships. So Kona last year, French Kona in 2024, and then Utah Kona in
Mm,
2021, 2022, right after
yeah.
COVID. Yeah, and 5 trips to 70.3 world championships as well.
Yeah. So that is cool in and of itself, because thinking offhand, the World Championships have only been at 3 locations, and you have actually crossed the finish line at all 3. So that's cool. That's a claim that not a whole lot of people can make. I know there are some that they just like automatically qualify every year. It's like not even a big deal for them. But man, for the rest of us, that is super cool. Where you mentioned New Zealand before, where else have you done the 70.3 Worlds?
Yeah, St. George twice in 2021, 2022, Finland in 23, New Zealand in 24, and then Spain last year in 2025.
Nice. Have you qualified for this year?
I have. I qualified last year at Oregon 70.3.
Very nice. Congratulations on that. And then, we're all waiting with bated breath to see where the next year is going to be, and see if the rumors are true that it's going to be back in the U.S. So yeah. So you're like running out of pages on your passport just of all these world championships you have to go to. It's rough life.
Well, it's great because I didn't get a chance to travel throughout all of my schooling. I never could study abroad, really couldn't afford the time away, all the different aspects of the schooling that I've gone through. So I'm a late bloomer when it comes to international travel, and I don't hate it.
Yeah. Well, I'm a very late bloomer because I'm a decent amount older than you, and I've yet to leave the North American continent. So I've been all over. I've been everywhere in the U.S., been to Canada, been to Mexico, Latin America, all that, but I have never made it across the pond, which I definitely want to. And now that I'm in that empty nest stage of life, I think that it's going to be kind of like you. You had to wait for the right time. But yeah. So how did you get into triathlon?
That's a great question. So I have always been athletic. I grew up playing ball sports, so basketball, soccer, dabbled a little bit in gymnastics, like all the things. But basketball was the main sport. I rode horses competitively. That was my big thing. Kind of competed at the same level that I do now with triathlon up until college, but was not going to college to play sports. So I got into distance running towards the end of my college career just to stay active. And I found that it was quite therapeutic and kind of allowed me to mentally decompress with all the academic load and just, stay fit. Continued that in dental school, ran a couple of half marathons at the time. And then flash forward to my residency, which I did in Charleston, South Carolina in pediatrics, and was just looking for a community, looking for a way to stay active in the triathlon community. For anyone who watches this that's in Charleston or thereabouts, it is such a lovely area to train. There's such a wonderful community of people there. And so I quite literally walked into the local triathlon and endurance sports shop there, Blue Sky Endurance, and said, I want to do this. So I bought some span. I bought a very entry level bike and reached out to a buddy of mine who has been my coach ever since, Greg Gersicki, who I knew did Ironmans. He and I were at Wake Forest where I did my undergrad kind of around the same time. He was a graduate student in health and exercise science, and I was an undergrad. And I said, I don't know anything, but I just bought a bunch of stuff, and I know you do this sport. Do you coach? And so he agreed to get me teed up for a half marathon at the time, and it kind of clicked. And so I found predominantly what I was looking for, which is community. And I raced there. They have a great sprint series in Charleston, and fell down the slippery slope even further, ran a marathon down there, but just was exposed to just what a wonderful community of people that the sport will put in your life if you let it. So my graduation present to myself from residency was to race my 70.3, or first 70.3, which was Augusta in 2019. It was ridiculously hot. And I can remember like halfway through the run being like, oh my God, what were you thinking? But of course, we do the thing that we always do, which is we cross the finish line and say, I'm never doing this again. And then you wake up in 24 hours and you're like, oh
Yeah.
man, what can I sign up for? So that's the abbreviated version
Yeah.
of how I got into the sport.
It's almost a copy and paste. Seems like we all kind of have that same story. We, for whatever reason, we do a sprint, and next thing we know, we're neck deep and we're signed up for 14 races and doing things we never thought possible. But yeah, super cool. So taking a little step back to your kind of your day job. So you work in a hospital now, and you perform surgery on kids. Yeah, that's not what I do. So I'm a triathlon coach. we live in different worlds so far as that goes. Tell us a little bit, what is like your day to day? What are you doing at the hospital? What kind of procedures and that sort of thing do you do?
Yeah, my work friends who are not in the athletic world whatsoever question if I sleep. I get the nickname Wonder Woman or something thereabouts from time to time, but I do sleep. And over the years, I have learned the importance of sleep. But my day starts very early. My days can range from regular clinical practice, so being in like a dental clinic setting, to being in the operating room, to being on call and being called in at like 2 o'clock in the morning for kid versus coffee table, kid versus
Mhm.
pavement, and so on. So regardless of where I am, my days always start pretty early. On average, I'm usually up anywhere between 4 to 5 to sometimes 3 in the morning. I have my routine because I'm getting older now, and I've learned the importance that I cannot roll out of bed and just hit it. I do have to make sure my body is also awake. So there's some stretching involved. I knock out swim, bike, run, whatever strength training I have to do, and then I head into the office. I do regular clinical things, so cleanings, fillings, crowns, all the things that most people seem to be afraid of. Going to the dentist is not a pleasant thing. But what's unique about pediatric dentistry is we see a lot of children who either have extensive dental needs, they have various medical or developmental complexities that prevent them from being able to receive care in a clinic setting. So that's where the OR comes into play. So in the operating room, I'm doing basically what I do in the clinic, treatment wise, things ranging from fillings to extractions to minor kind of soft tissue surgeries. I'm also a part of we have a cleft lip, cleft palate team, essentially a craniofacial team. So sometimes I'm in those types of procedures, at least, preparing the teeth or doing things that tee the patient up to have certain surgeries later. I was in private practice for about 6 or 7 years and transitioned last year to our local children's hospital to start their first ever dental department. And so I service a lot of children that are either in the hospital, kids that need dental clearance before other major surgeries for their heart or for cancer treatments. Of course, our cleft and craniofacial team that I mentioned. And so no day is the same. I also take a call for the hospital as well, 1 week per month. So for 1 week every month, my phone, I feel like I'm always on call because they've never had a dentist on staff before. So this is a completely new thing. I'm starting it from the ground up. And it has been so rewarding, just emotionally and to deal with and work with children and families that sometimes and more often than not seem to fall through the cracks when it comes
Mm.
to getting regular care. But anyway, I take call, and that means sometimes getting woken up and heading in at 2 o'clock in the morning, or in the middle of a run, being like, "Okay, I'll be there in just a minute." Which happened a couple weeks ago. It means, keeping my phone at the end of a pool lane and
Mhm.
checking, being on the trainer a lot. You can't really do a 5 hour ride outside when you're on call. So, I've learned how to adapt and overcome and find pockets in my day to get stuff done. If I'm training for a full, sometimes that schedule I just mentioned means that I also have something at the end of the day,
Mhm.
or longer things on the weekend, shorter things on the weekdays, and then modify my weeks. Especially when I'm on call, we try to do more active recovery those weeks. So that's the abbreviated version.
And you're actually on call right now, right? That's
Yeah.
so we could be interrupted at any moment if kid meets a coffee table or something like that. All the more reason to say thank you for your time here. And so this is a family business as well. Your dad's a dentist, right?
Yeah, so we're teeth people. My dad is an orthodontist. I had my braces for what I consider to be far too long, that he had to make sure they were just so. If he ends up watching this, I do wear my retainer every day. And yeah, so I always knew I wanted to go into a field of work where I had the ability to help people. I'm a nerd. I love science. My degree in college was in health and exercise science. I had minors in biology and chemistry. So I think the human body is fascinating,
Yeah.
and especially now kind of gearing that mindset with what I do in triathlon and just total nerd. But anyway, I have an art background too. That's a big pastime of mine that I don't get into nearly as much as I would like to, but dentistry is this wonderful blend of like real life arts and crafts
Mm,
and science. And, you get to have relationships with your patients. And, I feel that helping people piece where in my world, you get to watch children grow up. You get to be a part of a family. So with pediatrics, you're not only treating the child, you're dealing with their parents for better, for worse. I see a lot of kids in foster care. I see a lot of unique social situations for better, for worse. When I'm on call, nobody likes getting called in at 2 o'clock in the morning, but I tell people I get to come in at a very bad time in someone's
mhm.
week or day, and I get to try to make it better. And so I got to see how my dad gets that same joy from his patients that he would treat and how I would witness that growing up. And, there was something about that I was like, I want that ability to make that impact in someone's life. And so taking all that into consideration, here I am, a pediatric
Yeah.
dentist.
Yeah, that's cool. And I've had the pleasure of meeting your dad. I've had the pleasure of hanging out with him at several races, and he is a seasoned Sherpa. He knows where to be, and he is incredibly proud of his daughter as he should be. But yeah, he's definitely a good one to hang out with. I mean, he and I are obviously different people, but always enjoy my time with him, and look forward to seeing him out on a race course again soon. So you mentioned Wonder Woman, and I know like that's kind of like a thing with you. Every time I see a Wonder Woman something, it always reminds me of you. And you've gotten pictures from me of Wonder Woman stuff. I remember there was like a Jeep one time that was all decked out in Wonder Woman. And then we were at Warner Brothers Studios with my son out in California, and there was this huge statue of Wonder Woman. And I think you got pictures of both of those. How does that Wonder Woman mindset, how does that play into your triathlon lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, I joke and say that I don't necessarily have athletic genetics. I have gritty genetics. So, neither one of my parents were super athletic, at least based on their report. And now my brother played sports. I'm the youngest of three. My sister played sports, but I wouldn't say like I'm particularly athletically gifted. Even when I played basketball, I consistently was awarded most improved player, but I always came early. I stayed late. I got extra help. I hustled. I was the first person up and down the court, usually being a bigger person that, takes some effort. And maybe that was my calling at the time to try out for the track team, but whatever. Alas, hindsight's 2020. But same thing in academics, there were subjects growing up that I was very good at, and there were ones that I consistently needed extra help. But I never shied away from recognizing that I needed help, and I fearlessly got that extra help until I mastered what was at one point a weakness. And so that has kind of just been a theme in my life. And I credit my folks for being very determined, very hardworking, work hard to get to where they are from where they started type people. And so I think that has been so ingrained in my brain growing up that in my sport, I did not necessarily grow up running. I had zero swim background. I didn't learn how to ride a bike until probably like early middle school.
Wow.
And sometimes that shows in my bike handling, although I'm a lot better now.
Because
But
kids on bikes get their teeth knocked out, so your dad probably didn't want to let you on the bike for mess up the orthodontic smile.
I always, side note, I always ask parents when they come in, when the kids come in with bike trauma, like, were they wearing a helmet? No. So
Yeah.
parents, children, make sure they
Hmm.
have. But anyway, I have adopted this mentality of toughness, and I've learned to titrate that. It's a blessing and a curse. I've learned that I sometimes need to have more grace and be a little bit more soft with myself. It's very easy to put on those blinders of perseverance, but that is, where that Diana Prince, that Wonder Woman mentality comes from. Not only the grittiness and the hardworking side of things and the quest for betterment and to overturn every stone, to look under every nook and cranny, to squeeze the most out of myself in sport and life. That is where that comes from. And, I think too, the other piece of that Wonder Woman mentality is looking at all the things that I juggle from, the crazy schedule I just mentioned to what I do in my professional life to, my personal life as well, trying to be a normal human, and then all those things in sport. And then finally, I'm exposed to a lot of children that ever get the opportunity to swim, bike, run, be completely healthy. And that is extremely grounding, extremely humbling, and definitely puts things in perspective. So the Wonder Woman mentality also has this component of just feeling extremely humbled and grateful just to be able to do these superhuman things, just basic movement and health and, much less add to that the ability to compete or just train in general. So it's a multifactorial thing.
Yeah. So I think I really enjoy hearing that because I think sometimes people will make the assumption that for some people, things just come easy. And I think they probably do for some, but not for everybody. And it's obvious through what you shared. You have a lot because you've done a lot. You work hard, you dedicate yourself to it. You are relentless in your pursuit of those goals. And you don't have these impressive titles, these world championship qualifications and finishes simply because, your genetics, you got a golden ticket on your genetics. It was because you worked hard and you dedicated yourself to it. So, those are the kinds of things that to me are obvious. And again, one of the things that I really respect about you. So kind of moving on to triathlon a little bit more. How did you first get involved with Team Zoot?
So I guess it was after my first year of racing. So first year of racing was like 2017 to 2018. So second year of racing, my coach was like, you should maybe look into joining a team. It would help you maybe find community. I know some of the teams offer great discounts and things like that, people to learn from, train with. At the time, I was considering moving back from Charleston back to Virginia, where I'm from. So, we brought up finding community in that regard. And so I looked at all sorts of different teams at the time. And my mom had given me for Christmas that year a Zoot tri kit. And I was doing sprints at the time. And she told me they were for my Ironman races. And so my mom now knows the difference between sprint, Olympic,
Yeah.
and Ironman. And in fact, as a side note, when I went to Oceanside, she was like, "Is this just a half?"
Yeah.
So anyway, she had given me this kit and I was like, "Well, I really like Zoot. They have a team. It looks pretty fun. I'm going to apply. I don't think I'm going to get in, but, we'll see." And so I made the team, and best decision I've made in my sport, in the big decisions that come our way in this sport.
Yeah.
Hands down. Been a member of the team since, was asked to serve, burpees, as regional captain in 2021. And now, have been at the helm for the Mid-Atlantic since. And when I moved back from South Carolina to Virginia, two of my first friends that I made back in Virginia are Zooters. And I actually just caught up with one who's now out near Oceanside. This past or 2 weekends ago. So it is a dynamic group of people, huge. If you go to a race, you're bound to see
Yeah.
one of us, but it is a very close-knit, hugely, if that makes sense. And we try really hard to integrate that web of people so it does feel like what we call ourselves, which is an Ohana.
Yeah. And actually it was the Texas captain, our good friend Susan, that actually made our introduction out there in Arizona. And Susan's been a captain for a number of years as well. And so you started with the team in 19 and by 21, including the pandemic, you were promoted to regional captain and been, so I guess this is what, year 5 now that been doing that?
Yes, I've been herding the cats I'm saying that because I'm petting one of my cats right now. She has no concept of personal space, so she's
All
at the
good.
bar stool. Anyway, been herding the cats in the Mid-Atlantic since 2021.
Yeah. So my dog, Eleanor, she made her first appearance on the podcast in last week's. She usually just kind of chills and hangs out, but yeah, she wanted to come and see. And who is this?
So I have 3 cats: Hoka, Watts, and Freestyle, all appropriately named.
Yeah.
This is Freestyle.
Freestyle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think
welcome, Freestyle. Good to see you. Hope
Yeah.
everything's well. Yeah.
She's thrilled to be here, as you can tell.
So kind of moving on to Oceanside. This was actually it was a captain's race for Zoot. Is that right?
Yeah. So, since I have been a captain, we have an annual captain's meeting that they try to tie into some race. So for a number of years, it was in Arizona, Ironman Arizona. And then we realized that it's a lot easier for folks to agree to race a 70.3 than it is a full. So we met in Oregon for a couple of years. And then last year was in St. George. And then this year they chose Oceanside. We had our annual meeting where we talk about the brand, the team, things that we can do better, things that are coming down the road for advancement and growth. And just a good all around time to get together. The captains are some of my favorite people, and I only get to see a handful of them at this meeting. So my sides always hurt from laughing so hard. And it's a good weekend. Reminds you of all the things that the sport's about. But for those of us that want to race, that option is out there. So a handful of us did race.
Yeah. So then I just realized again, I wasn't thinking about last year being in St. George, and then it clicked that to bring up Susan again. Susan and I like ran into each other, like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" It's like, "What are you doing here?" And so yeah, that was cool. So yeah, I got to see who at the time was a neighbor all the way out in St. George from Texas, but yeah. So again, I've never actually been to Oceanside. I've been to all the big venues. I've been to every Ironman venue in the U.S. A lot of the halves. But given the fact that Oceanside is always the same weekend as Galveston, and I used to live 30 minutes from Galveston, obviously it was an easy decision for me to always go to Galveston. The one year that they had decoupled, they were actually, because it's something about the dates fall in Oceanside is a Saturday race and Texas is a Sunday. And the way the calendar worked, they were split. So I finally took my opportunity. I signed up to race Oceanside, and I think I was going to race Galveston as well. And then lo and behold, 2020 happened. So it was 2020 when those two races were not on the same weekend. And that was like my one opportunity to go to Oceanside. So I've never been, but heard all sorts of things about it. What is the vibe at Oceanside?
It is like a little mini world championship. It feels like there's so much hype. I can remember when I first got into the sport, I used to watch like old like Talbot Cox videos on YouTube from like Kona, but there was this one video from Oceanside, and it's of basically I think it was a race where Jan Frodeno and Lionel Sanders were like cat and mouse. But anyway, but I can remember watching that when I was first getting into the sport, thinking like, oh man, this is there's so much hype around this race. And to your point, it was always at a time of the year where, I usually race pretty late in the season. And my coach is like, we're not going to do anything major until, May or June to allow your body to rest because, left to my own devices, I would race everything. But it just so happened that it worked out this year. It was our captain's event. So there was already hype for me going into it, but just to be at the race, it's so iconic. That's kind of like the birthplace, more or less, of our sport.
Yeah.
Your major companies and brands are out there. So the expo is just like mind blowing. It brings so many like figureheads in our community together. Obviously, it's a big drawing card for your professionals too.
Uh-huh.
So it did give that vibe of like being at a world championship, but it's Oceanside.
Yeah. So one of the announcers there is another friend of mine, Colleen Rue. Do you know Colleen? Have you met Colleen?
I've met Colleen, and that she's been the announcer at several
Yeah.
races that I
On the
have.
red carpet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really do like that. Obviously, we had Mike Riley, who was just the created the race announcer in the capacity that it is. But once he stepped away, and actually I had Colleen on the podcast a while back, and we talked a lot about this, but just having that opportunity now for the women to come in. And I know Colleen did a fantastic job, but and all over the place and all that. But did you have any interactions with her?
Not other than the red carpet, but I did get to watch the Iron Kids race, and she announced for that, and I got to see her interact with the kids and call them in and work with the parents. And as someone who works in pediatrics, I game recognize game.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think, she did a wonderful job with that, and just has one of those, you look at people in their different roles, and
Mhm.
sometimes look at certain people and you're like, yeah, I see why you do this, or I see why you click here. And I think in that moment of watching her at the Iron Kids race, I'm like, man, you are really good at this, and just creates that electric community, an all encompassing Ironman vibe that I think we've all hopefully been fortunate enough to experience.
Yeah. So what are the logistics like with this race in Oceanside? What, like, travel, like, were you close to the airport? Was there accommodations, bike drop off, check in, all that? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm traveling from the complete opposite side of the
Yeah.
country. So,
Long
you know,
flight.
anything on the West Coast is, when you're looking at planning your season, you're just like, and of course with like air travel now, my anxiety was through the
Yeah.
roof. Not
Yeah.
only, I think the anxiety with flight with triathlon comes in a couple different ways. Number one, am I going to make it? Number two, is the bike going to make it?
I think
Number
it's
three,
the other way around. Is number one, is the bike going to make it?
yeah.
Number two?
And then like, is the bike going to be okay if it doesn't
Yeah.
make it? I have a little bit of PTSD because when I went to Marbella last year, I left JFK to go to Madrid to then get to Marbella. My bike went to the Netherlands and then eventually made it to Marbella. But there were some people, I don't know, I'm sure people watching this know all the hype surrounding Marbella and the bikes. I have fortunately got my bike in enough time. So, I, I fortunately flew from Norfolk, where I live, to Atlanta. And then Atlanta all the way to San Diego. It was about a 45-minute drive from San Diego to Oceanside, which is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Never been to California.
Really?
No. Everywhere I think but for racing, but never been to California. So I enjoyed the drive to just,
Yeah.
kind of experience California traffic. And it was a pretty drive. It was pretty straightforward. I stayed in Oceanside. So there are a lot of good hotels kind of right there near the beach. Some of our other captains stayed closer to Carlsbad, which are the headquarters for Zoot. Carlsbad was, maybe a 15-20 minute drive into Oceanside. But I stayed right there and near all the hullabaloo. And it was very easy to get to places on foot, which is great because the rental car I got, they gave me this big old Expedition. Let me tell you, I drive a Bronco and I'm used to squatty wide car with a bike rack on it, not like this massive presidential, transport vehicle. So I parked that sucker and I walked everywhere that I could do.
That's great for your bike, though.
Yeah, plenty of room. Plenty of room for my bike, probably about 4 other people's bikes, but all I'm thinking about driving that thing is, oh God, I can't, parallel parking is a problem for me without this massive rig of a car. So, my point being is that things were very accessible there. It's a single transition race, which those are always great, but your village and your T1 area were like about a mile apart, but a pretty
Okay.
easy walk or ride your bike.
With a
So
helmet.
with a helmet, which, it's one thing. I have the Rudy Project Wing Dream helmet, which I showed a picture to one of my patients one day who, yeah, he was telling me about his bike. And I said, oh, you want to see my bike? Yeah. So I show him one of my race pictures and he's like, you look like a stormtrooper.
Yep.
And so
That's a
anyway,
perfect description of it.
yeah. So, dropping the bike off on the day before the race, you look legit in your kit, in your Wing Dream helmet, but when you're just in shorts and your t-shirt and this big old helmet, you look, people, locals are just looking at you like, who are crazy guys? Well, but yeah, it was a very straightforward race to get to and to get around for
Cool.
sure.
So, and I've actually not been, I've not driven that far south, but did you get to drive on the Highway 1,
Maybe?
Pacific Coast Highway, right on the water?
No.
Okay.
No.
I think it goes that far south. I don't know. I did it years ago. I drove from San Francisco down to LA and did a lot of it on the 1, as they refer to Highway 1. It's amazing. It's the most beautiful, breathtaking. It's dangerous to drive on because you're not looking straight ahead. You're looking out to the side. And yeah, it's amazing. So, gosh, I can't believe you haven't been to California. You got to go and race Alcatraz and do those kinds of things. Yeah, see LA, see San Francisco, see, and that's kind of stuff I've done. I've done all that a ton of times, but you've done all the European travel. So we just need to swap roles there. Yeah, and do that. But cool. So the swim at Oceanside changed a couple years ago. And I think this is one of those, like, I don't know. I know it was a tough swim because you were actually swimming out across the surf and then you kind of went around, came into that channel, and they since switched it to where you're largely just swimming over in that channel. Now, I was actually surprised to learn that you did not come from a swim background because you're a killer swimmer. Which of those courses would you have preferred to swim?
I think being a stronger swimmer, this is why I liked Ironman Florida, because I think it does favor a stronger swimmer. I think it would have been, you might have weeded your people out a little bit. You're not going to win the race in the swim, but I think going out into the surf and the old course based on what I've looked at, because obviously we raced the new course.
Yeah.
But going in from the beach, dealing with breakers, swimming out into the ocean, and then alongside, finding your current, kind of finding where to go in the swells, and then turning into the harbor. I think that would have been, for me, I would have enjoyed that challenge. I have the blessing of living near Virginia Beach, and we have a great open water swim series. I have a lot of open water
Cool.
experience. I feel very comfortable in choppy conditions. I don't really think about the critters that are out there, so I kind of just go in my zone. I would have loved that experience, but I love to swim. I'm not going to turn down any body of water.
Nice. What was the water temperature?
63.
Okay. Yeah. That the Pacific water is always a bit chilly. So you don't have to worry about it being wetsuit legal.
Yeah, that was a warm front based on what I was prepared for.
Yeah. Okay.
We had a warm day, warm water, and once you're in, your blood's pumping. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. What was your swim time?
30 minutes and like 16 seconds.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because I knew like your Ironman split is like 61, 62, something like that. Yeah. Yeah. And there's not many people that are doing that didn't like swim team as a kid. So that's good for you. Yeah. So anything else about the swim? Anything notable?
It was congested. The way it's like this weird oblong rectangle triangle thing. And at least the first, 500 yards, I felt like I was just whacking people left and right. I did a lot of, I tried to draft, but at the same time, I have a good, my sighting's pretty decent. I have no problem swimming in a straight line, but that doesn't mean everybody else does. So
Yeah.
I felt like I was sprinting at times to like just get away from people that were going like this. But once I got out of that first 500-yard stretch, it wasn't that bad. But it was pretty congested for a bit, which just gets annoying. But other than that, pretty straightforward. You just got to look where you're going and, be prepared for colder water. It really wasn't choppy. I felt like we had a little bit of push going out based on my splits. But yeah, not much else to report there. Pretty
Yeah.
cut and dry.
So we're going to talk about the bike course. I want you to tell us all about it, but you can't talk about the bike course at Oceanside without the fact that you're doing a decent amount of it actually on a Marine base. And there was actually conversations in the week prior that we don't know what the access to the base is going to be, given the fact that we are now engaged in a overseas conflict. So what was that like? To tell us about the bike course, and then what was it like actually riding through those gates onto the military base?
Yeah. So I was concerned, to your point, that I get an email from Ironman that things had been shipped, because I was looking forward to that. I mean, growing
Yeah.
up here in Hampton Roads, we have a huge naval base, we have an Air Force and Coast Guard presence as well. I mean, we've got everything here in Norfolk. So I was really looking forward to that, and I'm glad that they didn't make that change. I was very anxious that I was going to miss. You have to wear your bib that you would wear for the run on the bike, because that's how they know you're an actual participant in the race. So I had like panic dreams like the week leading up that I'm going to get on my bike and it's not there, and I'm going to get DQ'd or whatever they do. So the bike course was definitely challenging. About 2,700 feet of elevation. The majority of that comes at the back half, and I'm very type A. if that hasn't come across yet. So having never done this race, I looked at so many YouTube videos and podcasts and things like that to get people's opinions. And the things that stood out were the roads are crappy, the save your legs for the back half of the course because of pretty significant elevation, and just, be sure that you take in the feeling of being there at Camp Pendleton. And that's the latter is one piece of advice that was given to me many times over the course of my years in this sport, which is take time to look up on the bike course, not just for safety, but especially if you're in a really cool area with cool surroundings. And Pendleton was like that. I mean, they had tanks in places. You went through the gates and it was just like everything became just very kind of serious. And, you just had it just seemed like a very reverent vibe to be able to be there on that base.
Yeah.
And of course, there were groups of Marines and some of them were really quiet and just watching. And then I would say the majority of them were like, "Whoa, yeah, go." So crowd support makes a huge difference to
Yeah.
me in performance. I had the opportunity to volunteer with a local marathon the week prior here in Virginia Beach. And you could just see on people's faces, you start yelling, you start cheering for them, and they pick up the pace or they smile or they stand a little taller. And so being able to go through Camp Pendleton and have these people who could be doing other things. I'm sure they have important things to do at Camp Pendleton, but they're out there cheering for you. It's just this mutual respect for their service. And then, of course, their respect for what we're doing out there. And it was beautiful. It was humbling, just made you really proud to be able to have that opportunity, and like that mutual respect between their community and our community of athletes
Yeah.
too.
That is super cool. So in the same week again, down in 70.3 Texas, there's a toll bridge that connects the island back to the mainland, and that the bike course does that. So the running joke was you needed to have your quarters so that you could throw them into the basket at the toll to go across. And I guess maybe the joke for Camp Pendleton is you need like your birth certificate or your passport or something to get onto the base there. But that's interesting. Way back in the day when I first started racing Ironman events, you had to wear your bib on the bike always. It was kind of that rule, and kind of glad they did away with that because it was annoying. So tell us about, there's the signature climb there on base, and I know that accounts for a decent chunk of that 2,500 feet. Did that live up? And I'm sure in all your research you heard plenty about it. How was that, and did it live up to the hype?
I feel like now that I've raced in St. George, racing in Nice, and then doing Marbella in November, I live at sea level, or below sea level. It is impossible to practice that, significant climbing. I mean, we have the Blue Ridge Parkway, but that's like nothing. So I feel like in all of those collective experiences, I have no problem going up. Like I have the thunder thighs, I have the bike power. We've really focused on my bike over the last year. Granted, going into this race, I had come off like a significant run focused off season, and beginning of the season, I ran a half marathon and a marathon the month prior to Oceanside, a marathon to try to qualify for Boston, which I did. Yeah.
Yay.
But, there was a shift to more running and less cycling. I will admit, being completely vulnerable, share a moment, my bike legs were definitely not up to where they were last year. And that's okay. I knew that going into the race. But I will say, once I got to that hill, and of course, you get a good picture of it as you're coming down and looking up, like, oh God, I just put my grit pants on and I shifted appropriately and just said, wait, we're going to get through this. And then we are going to shift back to focusing on the bike after this race. But no, I mean, at one point, my bike computer read like 13% grade.
Wow.
Fine. And I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that's pretty accurate. But yeah, I mean, you're you're surrounded by people who are like, and everybody's moving at 5 miles an hour, and you have some people that are like doing the
Yeah.
swerving back and forth.
Just trying to stay vertical, trying to stay up. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course I'm thinking like, please don't bump into me, because if I
Yeah.
have to stop, I'm walking this bike up this hill. So it was just a matter of gritting and getting through it, and I'm probably set a new FTP,
Yeah.
but it definitely lived up to the hype for sure.
Yeah.
Fortunately, with these past experiences, not much phases me anymore. I think it
Yeah.
also with working in pediatrics. You just
Yeah. Well, even then, between St. George, Marbella, Nice, those are legit climbs too. So this wasn't your first rodeo on those climbs as well. So is it then like literally downhill into transition once you've kind of cleared that climb?
Well, it's if you look at the course profile, there's like the big climb,
Hmm.
and then they're like you think you're done, but then you remember they're like two, or at least I remember my research, there were like three climbs. Once you get through that, it's more or less like flat into transition, but based on what I had read and heard, it's flat, but you get headwind, which sucks because you're like, oh man, okay, I only have 10 miles to go. Great.
Yeah.
It's flat. And then, woof, headwind. But fortunately, on race day, we really didn't get a ton of headwind, at least in that segment. So it was kind of like, oh my God, like, okay, I see you, Lord. Like, awesome. This is great. Let me just get my head down and get done and get off this bike. But yeah, it's so for the most part, you're just straight into transition.
Yeah. So, and that's totally contrast of 70.3 Texas, because it is literally pancake flat. That bridge to the mainland is literally the only elevation change. And also the run course is highly contrasted, because it's just basically like one way. You run halfway, you turn around and come back, and like, whereas in Galveston, it's all around this like amusement attraction, and it hardly leaves the campus. And so there's like 30 turns or something like that, and then it's a 3-loop course. It's crazy how many times you turn. But at Oceanside, you only turn like once, right? Tell us how was that run course?
Yeah, I had gotten some insight from people who had raced it before and was prepared. Like, it's not flat. There are some hills, but they're punchy and they come right close to one another, but there's enough time to recover in between. Fortunately, coming off of a run focused off season and then a run focused beginning of the year, my
Yeah.
route has drastically improved over the last year. As an aside to that, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease in 2022. And as you have witnessed at races where I still tried to compete when I should not have,
Hmm.
uh, my health, my training, everything just kind of took a big hit. And so over the last probably 2.5 years since I've been in remission, everything has drastically kind of gone back up and is growing. The run being probably the most significant out of the three disciplines. And so I take a lot of pride in the grit that has kind of grown since that, and how that has transpired in my racing, especially at Oceanside. I used to get off the bike and be like, all right, let's just put one foot in front of the
Yeah.
other. And now to be able to get off the bike and be like, okay, I can actually run
Let's
people down.
go. Yeah.
Let's go. So this course really allowed me to come off the bike. I knew I was in contention for a podium spot based on our our Zoot captains who
Yeah.
weren't
Yeah.
watching. And so I put my laser beams on and said, okay, I'm gonna run people down. And so the course was predominantly flat. There were a few kind of punchy climbs, especially at the beginning. It's a 2-loop course. And so, you get through it and you're like, all right. But then you realize, oh crap, I gotta do this again. And at Galveston, I've raced there too. You gotta do it 3 times. So I didn't feel like it was, a leg buster of a run. All runs at the end of a 70.3, aren't exactly pleasant, but there was enough recovery between some of these punchy, almost ramp like
Hmm.
hills to pick your speed back up, get your heart rate back down, and then settle back into kind of your tempo effort. And that's been trying to figure out how to tackle hills, slowing down, keeping that heart rate under control so you're not in such a hole to have to climb out of once you crest that hill and then, rock it on, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then the nice thing about that out and back course is all those climbs become downhills on the other way. Is it like so close out and back that you can actually like see folks coming the other way, going the other way?
Yeah.
So
Oh, go ahead.
were you able to like pick out targets to run down? Did you know who you needed to go catch, or did you kind of just pick somebody to go get?
That's the problem. In my age, I'm 35 to 39, and I would say arguably women in the 25 to 29, 30 to 34, 35, 39, and 40 to 44, we all look like we're the same age.
Hmm.
And so, I'm passing people, I'm trying to catch people. I'm like, you could be 40, you could be 25. I don't know. I'm just going to try to run faster than you. So every time that I passed our Zoot captains, I'd kind of get an update on where I was. But no, I just, the little engine that could, I just run. And, I run as hard as I can. I run to a point where I know I'm not going to blow up, and I dance around that line. And, coming off of a marathon literally a month to the day prior to this race, I mean, I went into Oceanside like, all right, I don't know if I'm recovered. I feel pretty good, but we'll
Yeah.
see. It's early in the season. So it was almost liberating to kind of take the mindset of, I'm just going to run. This is the last leg of this thing, podium or not. I feel good. I'm going to go for it. So to answer your question, I just ran.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was one of those things. Body marking died of COVID back in 2020. And so used to, you would know who was your competition. And if you got passed by somebody that won in your age group, was like, hey, good for you. You keep going. But if they were in your age group, you knew you had to go with them. And same thing like with the wave starts and all that, where you started at the same time. Now you don't even know. I mean, you could battle the whole run and come to find out that, they started a minute before you, a minute after you. And that, that's into what making the difference. So we lost a little of that kind of, unfortunately. So tell us about the finish line vibe there at Oceanside.
Yeah. Any Ironman or any finish line is something that I never take for granted. I always gut it out with as much as it is. I always aim to empty the tank
Hmm.
down that finish line, but it's a balance of emptying the tank, but not to the well, to also be aware of that vibe of people
Yeah.
cheering, especially at Oceanside. It's such an iconic event. And so, I at the time, and you can see in some of my race photos, our team captains just aligning that chute and cheering, and
Yeah.
a good one of me nailing some of them with a high five. That's what this sport's about is,
Yeah.
chasing that finish line, and whatever happened between the start and that red carpet, and celebrating that or learning from it, or, building upon it or being humbled by it. And also being thankful for the people that are there with you, that have your back, and so on. And I really tried to soak that up this race. And it was just super humbling, and it just hit, I think, in particular, having started my triathlon journey watching that video
Hmm.
of Jan Frodeno and Lionel Sanders. And I think that was, I don't know what year that was, but it hit me running down, or at least as I was making that final, stretch down to
Yeah.
the carpet, like, and come a pretty long way from, a newbie on a entry level bike, sprints, watching this video, hoping I could go to that event, or race a 70.3 more or less. And then finally being there, it made me just extremely grateful and humble. And it's easy to get caught in the metrics and always wanting to be better and achieve the next thing, but we forget sometimes just how far we've come in our journey. And I think that's what this finish line just symbolized for me.
Super cool. And cherry on top, you got that World Championship qualification, and you got the podium spot, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
was fourth, so came
Very
in
cool.
the top 20 overall amateur females, and had a really good day.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like it. So I think I'm confident now that the claim that I made at the beginning has been realized, and thank you for sharing both your story, your background, all those things that drive you and allow you to do these very impressive things, and then just to report from the race and sharing all about that. Thank you for all of that, and I'm all the more inspired and impressed with you. And as we close out here, I always ask for a triathlon tip, but what is your top tip as a dentist?
Yeah. Um, I always tell my patient, their parents, that ideally, we'd love for you to brush twice a day, but we definitely want you to make sure you brush before bedtime. And I tell them that because cavity bugs don't sleep. But more importantly, a lot of things happen at night that cavity causing bacteria really just get lit over. And, our mouth dries out. If we don't brush off all that bacteria and food debris that we've accumulated during the day, it just creates an all you can eat buffet for those bacteria. And a whole lot of other things happen at nighttime. To keep a long story short and not to be a nerd on our chart, brush before bed. That's my number one tip. And make sure,
Okay.
that goes without saying.
Yeah. We don't do that.
Yeah.
And I don't brush before bed. And it makes sense. Like we eat all day and then like it makes sense to brush but then it's like a lot of times I brush my teeth and then I immediately go eat breakfast. And it's like, was that even worth it? Did that do anything? So it does make a whole lot more sense to like, as you're going into that fast, to have your teeth clean for a while. So thank you for that, Dr. Anderson. And now, what is your top triathlon tip?
A blanket statement for you're only as good as your most recent rest day. And, as people have probably realized at this point, I vibrate like up here, very type A, very more is better, do all things, rest day, like, I'm going to glitch mode. But over the years, and thanks to that autoimmune disease diagnosis in a roundabout way, I've learned the importance of listening to my body, loving the rest day, getting sufficient sleep, because all the efforts that you do while you're awake don't do a hill of beans worth of good if you are exhausted and your body does not have that time to recover and rebuild. So a blanket statement to include sleep, recovery, nutrition, mentally, unplugging from triathlon and goal chasing, to say that you're only as good as your most recent rest day.
Yeah, that's awesome, especially coming from that type A. And you're talking about getting up at 3 a.m. to go to the pool and do all that. So it's great to hear you say that because that was a little unexpected for me, and so I couldn't agree more with it. So just make sure you practice what you preach. So that'd be my back at you.
Yes.
So Ashley, I know you're on call. You got to take care of little kids and all that, but it's been so cool getting to catch up with you. I hope to get to see you out on the road sometime soon. And thank you so much for everything that you shared with us, and have a fantastic rest of your triathlon season.
Thank you. And thanks for all you do too.
All right. See ya.